All right, folks. So we saw all of the attention, all the eyes were on the spot Bitcoin ETF, and obviously that was exciting. We saw the market run all the way up to 49,000. Now we've dumped, and we're going to see how far and how deep this correction goes. But while we are watching the markets, I wanted to give us an update on the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit, and then also an update on the AMM and why Ripple is pushing for this AMM so hard. So without further ado, we're going to get right on into this update. A few points though on the banks that are struggling, the biggest banks in the world, including central banks around the world, that are reporting record losses and have the most amount of unrealized losses on their balance sheet that's being reported out of any of the institutions. Guys, this is truly incredible. And so without further ado, let's get right on into this update. I'm going to try to make this one rather quick for you guys. And if you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop us a like, drop me a comment, let me know what you think. And also, all of our community resources are at my website, zachrector.com. Let's get right on into it, guys. So starting off here, we're looking at the Federal Reserve and what they were able to accomplish last year, which was income after expenses came in at negative 114.3 billion last year. That's right, folks, negative 114 billion for the Federal Reserve. Imagine if you and me got to run our businesses that way, right? And so, yeah, we definitely are enjoying the movie, enjoying the show, and they're just one institution. We look at Bank of America is now reporting unrealized losses of 98 billion on securities in the fourth quarter. Now, the good news is that this is actually down from the 131 billion that they had in reported for losses on the third quarter. Remember, these are unrealized losses because all of these banks loaded up on bonds when they were paying, 0%, 1%, and now we've got bonds that are paying 4 and 5%. This has caused all of these banks to have a record amount of unrealized losses. Now it gets worse. The Fed's Bank Term Funding Program, the BTFP, which recall, this was the program that they launched last March 2023 during the banking crisis, and this is part of the complete backstop that they had to roll out for the banking system just to make sure that we didn't have a complete implosion. And this program, which helps the bank source liquidity, has hit a record high of 148 billion. Unprecedented support for insolvent banks. That's what is needing to be done to keep the system afloat. This is quantitative easing on steroids because what happens is banks trade old bonds that were a loss for gains getting 100 cents on the dollar, but the program is set to end in March. Now, it may be extended. There definitely is a chance that this program could be extended by the Fed in March if the situation still is bad and deteriorating. And as we see, how did Bank of America offload? They went from 131 billion of unrealized losses to now they're only reporting 98. Congratulations to B of A. Well, this is part of it, right? The BTFP program. I'd be curious to see how much they've tapped into this program to fix the issues that they're now facing. Now, on top of that, we reported on it yesterday. You guys saw that Citi is actually laying off another 20,000 employees. On top of all the other thousands of employees that have already been laid off there too, we're talking about tens of thousands of employees that have been laid off just at Citigroup. On top of that, hundreds of billions worth of unrealized losses. I believe that the total had gotten up to about 684 billion of unrealized losses for all of the banks in the United States. That doesn't include the Federal Reserve's 100 billion of record losses as well. So times are tough out there for the banks, and this is why they need an XRP. This is why they need a partnership with Ripple. Now, what they've been waiting for is for this SEC versus Ripple lawsuit to get behind us, and that's when they're looking to tap into XRP for a quote-unquote competitive advantage. As I pointed out yesterday, you saw Vanguard, second largest money manager in the world, right behind BlackRock. Vanguard says no thank you to the spot Bitcoin ETF, and they're not going to provide it to any of their investors. Not at all. We saw Merrill Lynch says no thank you. We saw Bank of America says no thank you. And so all of these institutions are saying no to the spot Bitcoin ETF, but we already know that Bank of America has been partnered up with Ripple going back since 2018. I think even before that. And we know that, the word on the street is that basically they've been waiting to use XRP for a quote unquote competitive advantage after the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit. So, definitely two sides of the story here as we see they want nothing to do with the spot Bitcoin ETF, partnering up with Ripple. Thank you very much. Let's sign up. And by the way, we're excited to use XRP after this lawsuit. And I'm going to show you kind of what we're looking to settle up in this lawsuit before we can continue on with Ripple's world domination, providing the best liquidity in the world. So we get this update here from our good friend James Phelan. Huge shout out to him. The SEC has filed a motion to compel Ripple to produce its financial statements for years 2020 and 2023, and B, its post-complaint contracts governing institutional sales. So it wants the financial statements for 2022 and 23, and then they want to see what contracts, what deals have been done after the lawsuit was filed. So basically, all those ODL sales that Ripple has continued that they argue are not investment contracts, unregistered securities, that is what is in dispute right now. Bill Morgan adds that there is as much at stake here for Ripple as the issue of whether XRP itself was a security for all XRP holders. So he's saying that both these issues are just as important. Ripple has already won, and all of the XRP community has already won on the fact that XRP in and of itself is not a security. But now we get to dig a little bit deeper into these institutional sales, the on-demand liquidity sales. And Ripple has been arguing, and many of these lawyers have been arguing, that these on-demand liquidity sales, they're not investment contracts that have lockups or stipulations. They're basically just giving, these firms and institutions XRP in exchange for dollars, so that these institutions can use XRP for its intended utility as a bridge currency for treasury management. All the different utilities that we're going to be getting on the XRPL is going to be massive. And so these institutions want to add it to their bag. They want to use it for cross-border payments now. And I think that some of them are treating it as a reserve currency like many of us are as well. It is not just whether a permanent injunction will be ordered, but how wide and restrictive the injunction will be and how much it will stop or adversely impact on Ripple's ODL business. Bill Morgan says that I've always maintained ODL sales of XRP are not investment contracts and that Judge Torres grouping them with other institutional sales was an error and Ripple needed to appeal on the issue. So we are going to see whether or not, what they're able to get from them, as now the SEC is trying to pry in to Ripple's business and those contracts a little bit further. And Ripple has asked to they want to extend the timeline for their response until January 19th. I do expect Judge Torres to grant that. I believe that is going to be answered by Judge Torres anyways. And so we'll probably get an answer, sometime over the next week here on Ripple's response to the SEC trying to pry into their business a little bit further. Now, Fred Rispoli had put out this tweet on January 8th, which was a few days before we finally got an update. But Fred was spot on. His spidey senses were tingling, and he could feel that the SEC versus Ripple case had been too quiet. And sure enough, it had been, and now we've got the update. And so he highlights how completion of damages-related discovery is February 12th, and that he's surprised that we haven't seen any SEC discovery motions filed, given how hostile this litigation has been. Well, just a few days later, we got the SEC filing that motion for the 2023 and 2022 financial statements and all of the ODL contracts and other institutional sales post the SEC filing the case. So he says, I would expect to see one in a week or so, and we got it. And he says that otherwise, if we didn't get that, that would mean that the Ripple and SEC are playing nice and, maybe they're looking to settle. But that was not the case, as the SEC has now responded, and they're definitely not playing nice. He says, at this point, my thought process is one of two outcomes. SEC gets the discovery it wants, reviews it, and the parties finally settle. If not, this will be dragged out through damages briefing, which concludes April 29th with a ruling likely in the early summer. So right now we are doing the damages and the remedies on, this case, and only on the institutional sales part, right? Judge Torres ruled that in and of itself, XRP is not a security. We now know that. And as Fred points out here, now that we've gotten the tweet here just a few days later, he says, I feel like I can read Tenriro like a book by now. SEC filed their motion to compel further discovery today. Looks like the SEC and Ripple aren't playing nice after all. So that is the update on the SEC versus Ripple case, folks. It looks like we should be concluding at least this part of the case by early summer, as the discovery part of the damages. We had the discovery at the very beginning, right? That's all concluded, and then we got the final summary judgment from Judge Torres where she ruled that the institutional sales were a security. So now we're doing discovery on the damages, the remedies that the SEC, they need to collect all this money to protect investors, even though the retail investors are not even included in this part of the case. This is only on institutional investors and sales that Ripple conducted. So it's just an absolute joke. But nonetheless, the SEC pushing in, prying to get a little bit more information out of Ripple. And it's going to be interesting to see over the next week. We should get that response from Ripple. Hopefully we will see this, the damages and the remedies done sometime by April. And then we will see that final agreement, settlement come in here by this summer, right? So hang on in there. And please remember that after this part of the case does conclude, barring that they don't do some sort of appeal, but once this gets settled, it'll be very clear how Ripple can conduct sales to institutions that want XRP. And after that, I expect the floodgates to open up because, banks, institutions, whoever, any institution will be able to know how to get XRP from Ripple without it being some sort of investment contract that, Judge Torres has ruled were securities. And I agree with the lawyers that ruling in the ODL sales, as long as they didn't have lockup periods and different stipulations that make a quote unquote investment contract, and there is no, one could argue too that there's no expectation of profit because the XRP is just being acquired by these institutions so that they can use it for treasury management, cross-border payments, whatever the utility is. So anyways, we'll get to see that battled out here over the next few months. And we're hoping to see this case come to a conclusion here in 2024. Once that's behind us, open up the floodgates of institutions that are going to be scooping up XRP. Now, we're not done. We got a little bit more insight because there's another case that's going on. And this is the class action lawsuit that was filed by some moron out of California, arguing that, he bought XRP at like $2 and his investment's down. And he only invested like $500 or something. It's the most ridiculous case. Like, who's paying this guy to fight this case against Ripple? He's an absolute clown and should be ashamed of himself. It's an absolute joke. But, nonetheless, we live in a litigious society and people will do any sort of crap that they think that they can get away with. So I hope that Ripple just strikes this moron down and destroys him in the legal sense. I really do. Because it's an absolute joke. This guy's saying that, XRP is a security and that he was relying on Ripple for profits. It's just an absolute joke. But nonetheless, there has been an update. Actually, there was a hearing, I believe, yesterday where you could phone in and listen to the court proceedings. And so I did not tune in and listen, but we did get some further documentation and insight into why Ripple is pushing for this AMM so hard. The automated market maker amendment for the XRPL is going to basically allow them to provide source liquidity without having to pay the fees to market makers that has been so costly for Ripple. So Mr. Huber pulling these documents from the case, and he says, why does Ripple want the AMM so much? I found the answer from Ripple's summary judgment motion in the Zakhanov case. So this is the case, the one guy that's trying to sue them. And he says, more than half of Ripple's ODL, on-demand liquidity costs, consist of fees paid to market makers who provide the necessary liquidity in illiquid ODL channels. Despite delisting in the US, XRP was apparently the only sufficiently liquid market that there did not require Ripple to pay XRP market makers themselves, but rather for them to do so on their own. The AMM is the ultimate solution to this problem. Anyone can make themselves a market maker and earn money not through additional friction or fees, but by increasing the liquidity of a particular trading pair. Ingenious. And so this is why I'm so excited. Many people in the community are excited for the AMM amendment. Once passed, we'll be able to put up our assets to provide liquidity for these different pairs. And this is going to be a way to build out liquidity in smaller exotic corridors where Ripple's had to pay high fees because please understand, Ripple had been using centralized exchanges and these relationships with these market makers to source liquidity for ODL. Now, the true intention for ODL is to source that liquidity through the DEX that's built into the XRPL without having to use a centralized exchange. They can just use the DEX that's built in to the XRP ledger. And then the secret sauce for the XRP ledger is the AMM, where we can build out all these liquidity pools and me and you can become market makers. We can participate through these liquidity pools. We can return a yield to us. This is going to be fantastic. And this is really going to open up the floodgates of just retail investors that decide to come to the XRPL because they can finally earn a reward, right? Everybody was chasing all these crazy, you guys know the DeFi craze that we had over the past couple of years. Time Wonderland giving you 80,000%, all these other projects giving you thousands of percent. That's not what we're looking for on this AMM. What we're looking for is USDC to Japanese yen pair that, you provide liquidity and you receive 4%, 5% yield. Like nothing crazy, nothing that's not sustainable, but something that can provide us with yield that's predictable, that's liquid, that's not going to be rug pulled. Because this is where all the DeFi rug pulls were created. So as we approach the AMM, I'm going to be putting out some additional content, how we conduct due diligence on AMMs and what to avoid so that we don't get caught up in rug pulls. Because as you guys have seen, just because XRP is awesome, the XRP ledger is fantastic, doesn't mean that people can't still put scams on the XRPL like they already have done. And that would be in the form of all the tokens that have been created. Obviously now we have NFTs, and as the AMMs roll out, folks will build out, they'll create tokens and then they'll create liquidity pools on the AMM for these tokens. And this is where there will be even, bigger rug pulls on the XRP ledger. And so this is why you subscribe, hit that notification bell and stay tapped in here, because that's one of the pieces of content that's coming your way, which is going to be how to conduct due diligence on XRPL AMMs. And we should be getting that here soon, along with the conclusion of the case. So we're going to be opening up the floodgates of retail looking to come in and participate on the AMM. And then we're going to be opening up the floodgates of institutions that can now approach Ripple and know how to receive XRP without creating some sort of investment contract that's going to get Ripple in trouble. So 2024 is set to be a massive year for XRP and the broader crypto community. Please make sure that you stay tuned in with us. We're going to be bringing you guys the best updates on not just crypto, all the current events, financial markets, and how to get you on the right side of the greatest transfer of wealth in world history. I am your host, Zach Rector. It's always a pleasure to bring you guys these updates, and I will see you guys in the next one. I am actually off to run off and do a Discord meetup, meeting up with some of our community members in person, an absolute blessing. And if you're looking to get tapped in with that private community, just head on over to my website, ZachRector.com. You sign up through Patreon to get access to Discord, and we can't wait to see you in there. God bless you all. Thank you so much.